You're listening to Second Cut. This is the podcast from nobody. We're an independent film podcast here on YouTube or wherever you are. I'm Jacob. We do topics in film criticism, history, whatever else. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who's frazzled because like my entire Stream Deck setup has gone to pot.
I know. I'm Sam. I don't think of anything for this, so I'll just say wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one who has to still remember that in 1991, Brad Pitt was a relative unknown somehow.
Wow.
It's a terrifying concept.
It is. Yeah, we're doing an episode about Michael Madsen, who sadly passed last week. It was like a week ago now.
Yeah, it was like 2 hours before we went live on last Thursday, and we're like, well, we know what we're doing this week, then, don't we?
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I'm not sure he's an actor we may have necessarily gotten to without him dying. No offense to him, but
yeah, I mean, because our previous kind of obituary kind of tribute episodes, you know, we've done David Lynch and we've done. Did we do one on Gene Hackman? Yeah, we did one.
Yeah, we did Roger Corman as well, you know. But
yeah. So these these legends, these titans of the industry, and Madsen, I think, as kind of as talented as he was, as good as he was at what he did. I'm not sure if he ever reached that kind of iconic status. You know, he was in a few big movies, and people who admired him as an actor really did so. But yeah, he's a bit more of like a cult star, I suppose you could describe him.
And I think he's also one of those actors that you know him because of like 2 or 3 films, and he's been in other stuff that you don't quite remember where he's been in.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, you know, it's quite weird like that.
And we've already done one of those other films. We did Reservoir Dogs, which, you know, I mean, I'm pretty sure when I think of Michael Madsen, I think of him doing Stuck in the Middle with You. So.
Yep.
Yes. Yep, that was the clip I posted on socials when he died.
Yeah. I was going to say, we did Reservoir Dogs a while ago, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. With Mark, didn't we, for our Siskel and Eva episode. That might be audio only. I don't know. So go check it out if it is wherever you get your podcast from. And we will actually put some of these. 6 months ago, it has been uploaded onto the YouTube, so it is there as well.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so we watched some of his other fare. Only one Tarantino movie. But what's tough about
it 2?
Yeah, what's tough about talking about Michael Madsen is he's not really a lead actor.
No.
I don't know if there's a film in which he is the lead actor.
He's very much a character actor, a supporting player, isn't he? And I think he is perfectly happy in that role throughout his career. I don't get the sense he was necessarily shooting for superstardom.
No,
and I think a lot of his roles are just seems like that seems like fun, a fun few days I could turn up for. Yeah, I'm gonna.
I mean, I've seen like a couple of clips of it years and years ago, but I don't think I've seen Free Willy all the way through. So how prominent is he in that? Because that's one of the other things.
Yeah, he's one of the main adults, isn't he? He's the dad in that, I think. Dad or uncle, I can't remember. Yeah, the adult responsible for the little boy, anyway. Yeah.
What's that? He's as prominent in the same way that somebody like John Saxon is in Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, he's like 5th or 6th build, enough to be a main character, but not kind of hogging all the screen time.
I mean, that did surprise me actually when he did die. A lot of people on social media posting how important the character he was to people growing up. You know, that he was like one of the the good movie kind of dads or uncles, you know, and
which is weird because pretty much every other thing I've seen him in, most of the time, he's just a complete cutthroat sort of.
Yeah, he's good at playing nasty piece of work. There aren't that many cuddly roles from him, are there? Yeah, so there's Free Willy. Obviously, you'll come onto it, Kieran, but I think Thelma and Louise, that character's a little bit different to his usual fare. I think because he plays slightly different shades in that. But yeah, generally he's good at playing wrong uns, wasn't he?
I was going to say, I think I've seen about the first half an hour of Donnie Brasco, which is probably something I'll need to watch in the next few days to finish that off as well. He's obviously in that as well. I think more mafia people, because obviously it's Al Pacino, and Al Pacino does not play pretty much anything else most of the time.
I mean, I guess you haven't seen Jack and Jill then. I mean, when I think of Al Pacino.
Why would I want to?
I'll force you at some point.
I'll be conveniently unavailable.
We'll probably do another bad movie club at some point.
Wasn't that last week for Seagal?
No, that was Steven Seagal. That's different.
Yeah, that was a bad movie club, surely.
Well, I mean, speaking of not necessarily bad movies, but pretty drab movies. The film I picked was from 1989 called Kill Me Again. And I picked it because he sort of plays the villain in the film.
So this is very early Michael Madsen. I mean, this, people think of, like Thelma and Louise and Reservoir Dogs as these like two breakthroughs, don't they?
Spoiler alert. I watched the beginning couple of minutes of a documentary on Thelma and Louise, and essentially it was being known for being in this movie that kind of got Madsen onto Thelma and Louise, and having worked with Harvey Keitel, got him onto Reservoir Dogs, which then eventually get him into Kill Bill. So it all kind of links together, and this is kind of the linchpin.
That's really interesting. I think this is definitely a movie where you see somebody in it and go, boy, I sure would like to see them in a different movie. Like we'll get on Tarantino, but like that's a big Tarantino thing. And this movie is just, I don't know. It's one of those movies that when I was looking through his filmography, I saw it's a neo-noir thriller. It's got Val Kilmer in it. It takes place in like Nevada, the Las Vegas, Reno kind of area. And I thought, oh, maybe this will be like, a hidden gem sort of movie. And it's not. It's just, I think what's really lacking from it is the characters. Because like Val Kilmer is fine. And same with Joanne Whalley is the woman's name. I don't know her from anything, but she looks like people.
Wasn't she married to Val Kilmer? Weren't they both in Willow together? I believe.
Yeah, she was in Willow.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Very well known.
I think they did marry, and they had a very well publicized, messy divorce, I think.
Oh, that's fun.
Christmas Carol, again, Kill Me Again, Scandal. I'm looking down to see what she was in.
I wouldn't say I necessarily saw any chemistry between them in this film.
No.
Excuse me, I think you'll also find that she was in Twixt, Francis Coppola's last semi-appreciable movie.
I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if I would put Twixt as that.
It's vaguely acceptable as a film. It's not downright abhorrent.
I'd put that one with the guy from like Buffalo 92 or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
That's a better movie. Alden Ehrenreich.
I'm not saying Twixt is good. I'm saying it's
Twixt
at least
is not
vaguely passable.
We can fight about that a different time. John Dahl is the director, and I've never seen any of his other movies. This was like his third one. And, the idea of Kill Me Again is interesting. Michael Madsen and his girlfriend. He's the villain in this film. He's playing a guy named, I don't even know, Vince. Apparently his name is Vince. I remember Val Kilmer's Jack, and she is Faye Forrester, because they say those names a lot. But I don't think they say Vince much. But Vince and Faye, they knock off some like Las Vegas mobsters and steal $850,000. And they need to lay low for a while. But she doesn't want to. She beats him over the head with a rock while he's in the bathroom, steals the money, and goes on the run to, I guess, fake her own death. And that's how she finds Val Kilmer. She wants Val Kilmer to kill her. And then when people are still on their tail, she wants him to kill her again.
Yeah.
That's the title.
I mean, actually, watching this, strangely enough, and I'm going to have to do a little digging because I obviously didn't beforehand, I actually found it probably better than you did, Jacob, and not for the film itself, which is really weird to say. Um, but I think it was actually vastly improved by the score because it's a really weird, almost. I was thinking Bernard Herrmann's score for Psycho in it. There's some weird strings, kind of ethereal, kind of surrealist kind of string things, which kind of takes a lot of the because there's a couple of kind of shootout sections, like violent sections, and it doesn't have the kind of traditional sort of blasting orchestra you'd have, like big shootout scenes, even if they only last for 30 seconds. You've got this kind of weird, sort of low, strange kind of string section, which kind of takes it almost to a sort of, again, a surrealist sort of, not fantastical or nightmarish, but something that's slightly otherworldly. And viewed in that lens, with that score, you then view it that there's just something a little bit wrong. It's a different place, and I appreciated that part of it. Most of the rest of the stuff is incredibly sort of one note, incredibly quite derivative. It's a neo noir in 85 minutes. There's only so much you're going to be able to do. And there's kind of a reason that you haven't really heard of this. But
I remember that score standing out for sure.
Yeah, because it is different and unusual for a neo noir.
Yeah, it fits. It kind of reminded me of like David Lynch a little bit, like Twin Peaks music. But like, yeah, you're exactly right. It's incredibly stock. Where she goes to the down and out PI, and he's gonna help her out for money, but he's a little bit of a bad guy, and like, I just don't buy Val Kilmer in this role either. Like, he's not bad. Like, I just don't look at Val Kilmer and go, "Yep, down on his luck," sort of PI. No.
It's a weird thing for him to play, but obviously he's not massively well known at this point either. Yes, he's been in
He's done Top Gun.
Yeah, but aside from that, like, this is only a couple of years after Top Gun, and he was Top Gun is like third movie. This was his fifth film. He'd done Top Secret and Real Genius, which obviously you've heard of. He then did Top Gun. He then did Willow, and then did Kill Me Again. So yes, he did Top Gun, but it wasn't like he was in like international spotlight at this point.
Yeah.
So if you're taking this on, you're not in the international spotlight.
And they're both Kilmer and Madsen would reunite again a few years later when they're both considerably more famous in The Doors.
Exactly.
Madsen again only a supporting role in that, only in it for a few scenes, but quite key to the the story. And obviously Kilmer by that point, one of the most famous actors around and playing one of the most famous rock stars to ever live. So things were about to change for them both.
Exactly. Yeah, no, this film, it feels like the sort of film where if there was a little less violent, it could have been shot in the 40s. And you'd have it on sort of TCM when it was a thing. Rest in peace, Turner Classic Movies. At sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If it was shot in the 40s, maybe you'd have Humphrey Bogart in Val Kilmer's role. It's that kind of feel to it, but because it's shot in 89, there's something you kind of need something a little bit sparking there in order to take it beyond stock.
I'd rather watch the Breathless from the 80s. Like, that's a better neo-noir
I can't even
movie.
Remember Breathless from the 80s.
It's better than this, honestly, because I watched this and Thelma and Louise back to back, and there's just nothing in terms of like character or people interacting. And the other movie we did is Quentin Tarantino. So when you have those two films versus this one, like it's pretty drab. When it comes to Madsen himself, sorry, Sam.
Yeah, no, it's the main difference there that one was directed by Ridley Scott at its peak.
I mean, possibly, yeah. I mean, I was almost thinking that this looks like an original script. I thought it might have been based off like a pulp novel, that kind of thing from like the early 70s, just coming out of that kind of era, or even something from the 40s that kind of got overlooked, a hard-boiled sort of detective thing, because that would have made more sense. And it feels like it's kind of it is quite pulpy and schlocky in its ideas, and it is. Again, it's fairly one note. It's fairly plot point, plot point, plot point, plot point, plot point, and they're trying to do what they can. And because it's like under 90 minutes, there's not that much room for the characters to breathe. You kind of have to gauge their character by their action. There's no kind of moment of sitting down and doing something and talking about their emotions. I mean, you don't need that, but sometimes there are points when you don't have that in this. Again, the thing for me is that the score tries to take it some way different, and that's actually probably the most memorable thing about this, aside from the acting, which I think, Jacob, you're going to go to now, especially on the Michael Madsen side, which is of course why we're here.
Michael Madsen's fine. He's the bad guy. He's good at acting evil. He holds a cigarette up to a guy's eye to torture him, and I don't know. I mean, he's fine. He's probably the best part of the movie, but he's barely in it, and like that's not saying a lot because it is so stock and there's not much to him. He's just the bad boyfriend who's trying to hunt them down. And then in the end, she like betrays Val Kilmer and goes with him in a car, and they die in an explosion. And it's another movie like last week with the End of a Gun Steven Seagal movie. I never got the will she, won't she betray him. Like, I saw this twice. I didn't get that feeling from her. And I don't know if that's on the acting. I don't know if that's on the writing. But whatever. There's something about the ability for filmmakers to make me question, is this woman going to betray the PI that she is working with, or the consummate good guy? And I just never got that impression. And apparently John Dahl worked as a storyboarder on RoboCop. So
I was just looking at that, and this was his directorial debut. I think he wrote he wrote PI, but this is his directorial debut. As directorial debuts go, it's not the worst ever.
No, if I had made this, I would be very proud of it. But also, we're looking at it with every neo-noir movie that exists.
Yeah,
and like they're all better. Unfortunately,
this is an interesting point where, again, you have to give a slight thing with a directorial debut, because yes, he'd shot a couple of music videos, but when you've got a feature behind you, and you obviously know how it works, because you've written a couple of films before, you've kind of done storyboarding and stuff like that, so you have it down. But then going behind the camera and saying exactly what you want over roughly 90 minutes as well, that is a completely different feel as well. Anyone that's done kind of just filmmaking in general and film school, stuff like that, will know there's a difference from doing something that's 2 minutes long to 5 minutes long to 10 minutes long. As soon as you get to 10 minutes, you feel like a proper film director. Now times that by 8 or 9, and then have a budget of $4 million at the time, which is going to be something like odd 14, 15 now. There's a decent budget behind it, and then as a first-time director, you do have a lot of pressure, and the end result is not awful in terms of directing. The trouble is, now if you put it with everything else, a lot of it is just kind of fine, and that, I think, is the issue with this. I don't think there's anything massively wrong with it. There just isn't anything massively standout about it. Again, aside from the script, which it's
incredibly competent.
Yeah. It's incredibly competent first time. What was it? It feels like, when Hitchcock did his 2 versions of The Man Who Knew Too Much, and he said that the first one was done by a competent amateur, whereas the second version was done by a talented professional. This feels like a very competent amateur thing. And again, the trouble is that with Madsen, in terms of directorial debuts, 3 years later, he will be in one of the kind of biggest, most influential directorial debuts probably of all time now, in Reservoir Dogs.
Definitely.
I mean, like, I don't want to oversell Tarantino too much, because my things on Tarantino, but we'll get to them later. But it is incredibly influential. It's an incredibly good movie, and sometimes a director, we do have to kind of take some of that out of it and go that most people's first films is not the absolute bolt out of the blue, and those are very, very, very rare to happen. But yeah, this film kind of plods along, and it's an interesting little plot. It's a nice little idea of faking the death. Again, very sort of 40s, but it's just kind of there. Madsen is great as kind of the bully bad guy with his slick back hair, and kind of gruff demeanor and does that part well. I don't think the main actress does herself any favors. I didn't buy her as the lead in there, and Val Kilmer's just trying his best to be the good-looking guy, but he's also got to have like the kind of grit behind it as well, and in the nicest way. He doesn't get that in the same way that I don't think he would have fit as kind of he fits in Joel Schumacher's Batman and wouldn't have done in Tim Burton's. You know what I mean? There's just a grit that's kind of missing from him. So yeah, it's just kind of a film that's there, but it's I find it entertaining at least in a kind of stock way. It's not special, but it's at least fairly enjoyable to sit through. Spend an hour and a half.
Yeah. Fortunately, we have better movies to talk about. So
I was going to say, is that the quickest we've ever plowed through a movie
Yeah.
in the new format?
Yeah, probably didn't help that I didn't get to see it, so I've got nothing to say.
I mean, just watch any 80s neo-noir thriller, and it's basically the same thing.
I was going to say, it's an okay fun time, and if you get around to watching it, it's not like you're going to claw your eyes out, but you're not going to miss anything if you don't watch it at the same time.
Yeah. So,
which we do have to obviously say that is most movies. Yeah, at a certain point, you know, we tend to look at the amazing ones and the awful ones, but a good 75 to 80% of films are not great, but not awful either. So slap bang in the middle, I'd say, for this one.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have a great movie next.
Yeah.
Who did Thelma and Louise?
There's some fairly obscure, unknown director, I think, got behind it.
I meant Sam or you.
I mean, there's a fairly obscure and unknown podcaster that got behind it as well.
Yeah, so Kieran's time the spotlight.
Yeah. Yeah, so this may have been done by some stupid director. I don't know, some English guy. How dare an English guy direct movies set in the deep south of America?
Yeah. So some nobody from South Shields who starts in advertising.
Yeah, likes the slogan "Xenophobia sucks." I can't think. He might have done some other movies like Alien and Blade Runner and Gladiator, but they're never going to take off. They're
Kingdom
kind of
of
stupid
Heaven.
small movies. Yeah, stuff like that. Like what does he know? Black Hawk Down, like just Martian, just stupid little movies. Like it's not going to happen. Anyway, Ridley Scott goes and directs Thelma and Louise. Written by a first-time screenwriter whose name I've obviously forgotten now because this is how my brain works at this point. Somebody give me the writer. I'll get it in a second. That's it, Callie Corey, who essentially just wanted to try writing a screenplay, looked at a couple of others to see roughly how to format it, and wrote it out longhand, and then kind of in evenings borrowed a typewriter to type it up. Kind of shopped it around, and Ridley Scott's kind of going, well, I'm looking to expand my kind of things as a producer, and came on board to produce it. And then as they kept going through, people just kept asking him, why are you not directing this? Like, why would you not do this? And he was trying directors, and they were just like, just essentially saying, and he's going, they'll remain nameless. He doesn't want to name who they were in this little bit of a documentary I watched. The beginning of, but he's going, everyone, all like these decent directors are going, why are you not directing this? Shut up, direct it. And eventually it's like, okay, I guess I'll have to kind of get round and do it. And he was kind of attracted to it because it was essentially a very female-focused film rather than kind of a male-focused film, and he wanted to do that as a dynamic instead.
And that's a particular novelty, isn't it? Because as a road movie, a buddy movie, they're traditionally very male genres, aren't they, as well? It's been very American genres, so it's kind of an interesting new kind of take on that.
Yeah, so obviously starring Susan Sarandon, Gina Davis, and then probably the two, well, there's kind of three other big names. You got obviously Michael Madsen, we'll get to, as Jimmy. The detective is played by Harvey Keitel, who's Harvey Keitel, and then a very relatively unknown kind of big superstar that's been in a very kind of decently sized movie recently. I don't know what he is. It's Edward Norton, I believe. Yeah, definitely. It's Edward Norton, no, it's Brad Pitt, with his top off half the time,
Yeah.
because that's how it is. Because this is in
Yeah.
1991.
Yeah, and kind of a lot of people talk about kind of the best people who've ever looked on camera, and probably Brad Pitt in this has to be up there, on the male side of things, really.
Yeah, it's definitely very close, if nothing else. Yeah, and it's got. I mean, again, this is his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, ninth film, and the others, in the nicest way, I haven't heard of them.
No, well, I believe at this point he was still, still on like welfare checks and literally down
Yeah,
to his last few dollars in his account when he got this
I mean,
role. So I think
he's
he was thinking about packing it in, if he didn't get a hit,
Yeah, I mean, he was in a kind of, I think, a very small part in No Way Out, which got Kevin Costner and Gene Hackman,
Oh,
Sean.
yeah, and you say Fitzmaurice. I mean, literally, you've got to pause it to see him. He's in the background of a shot with Kevin Costner. He's
Yeah,
like it's literally
it's
like a walk-on part.
it's that kind of thing. Yeah, this is obviously in the success of Thelma was Louise kind of got attention to him, and then he'd go on to True Romance, Interview with the Vampire, and then kind of probably 7 and 12 Monkeys really is where he starts coming into it, and then obviously when he gets to the end of the decade, he gets Fight Club and Snatch going. And now he's a star. Yeah, now he's a star. Cameos in Friends, that kind of thing, and all that stuff. So Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon are, strangely enough, called Thelma and Louise. And they kind of go out partying the one night, and somebody tries to take advantage of Thelma, isn't it? I keep getting confused between the two of them.
Yeah, James Davis.
Yeah, and so Susan Sarandon kind of shoots the guy, and they're like, "Oh, damn, we've just shot a guy," and go on the run in a blind panic, and eventually on the run because they're like, "Well, nobody will believe that we did it in self-defense," and it's kind of a road trip movie where they're becoming outlaws and experiencing this new kind of freedom away from everything. In terms of Madsen plays Susan Sarandon's boyfriend, Jimmy. Kind of partner, ex-partner, best friend,
They're kind of on again, off again kind of lovers,
sort
aren't
of
they, I think?
thing, yeah. Who kind of visit at one point, try to wire a load of money as well, and that kind of thing in order to keep that going, and eventually kind of leaks information to Harvey Keitel as where they'll be ending up as well, and actually. Madsen was apparently, when the film came out, very annoyed because he had a few more scenes physically with Keitel, including he does something with a cigarette, I think puts it out on a table or something along those lines, and Harvey Keitel just lunged over the table at him, in character, and he goes, "Yeah, Harvey Keitel lunging at you in any situation is a terrifying experience," But yeah, I mean. And obviously from that he'll go into doing Reservoir Dogs. I mean, we'll probably do a thing on dogs in passing as well. But yeah, I'd watched it a couple of years ago and gone, yeah, this is a very good movie because it was one of those ones I'm going to tick it off. And then I watch it again and I go, not all of it might be to my taste, but I can't fault it either. Like it's one of those things where you watch and you go, this actually is a very damn good film, and we just kind of forget about it.
For me, it's in top 5 Ridley Scott films. Probably lower down that of the 5, but definitely in the 5. I think it's
Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator, and it's one of the two others essentially.
Yeah, basically.
That's kind of how it works. It is an astonishingly good film. You watch it and you go, everything is poised again. Scott is kind of at the height of his powers. He's had just over a decade of churning out the hits essentially, or future hits at least, and just kind of nails it. And I think the writing is beautifully kind of on point, and incredibly realistic. These characters, none of these characters are kind of, in the nicest way, super intelligent.
Yeah.
They're flying by the seat of the pants, and I think we all kind of have a thing that if we shot somebody and went on the run, we'd know exactly what to do. We'd evade the police for ages, and the actual reality is, no, we wouldn't. We'd be caught in 5 minutes. Being a dumbass.
They definitely panic and make mistakes, don't they? And
Yeah.
Just make the worst possible decisions in a given situation.
But I think that, I mean, people were saying, since the pandemic, if the pandemic has taught us anything, is that people are not geniuses. And everyone's like, I apologize to everybody in horror movies for making stupid decisions, because we all do that in real life. Like this is the situation. These characters are making stupid decisions. They are kind of too trusting. I mean, Gene Davis as Thelma kind of takes on board Brad Pitt, who's very good looking and flirting with her, chatting her up, and she's been very kind of insulated with her husband. Is it Darren or Daryl? For so many years. Yeah.
I mean, she's essentially fleeing an abusive marriage, isn't she?
Yeah.
And then
meets the young hot thing.
Yeah, and it's almost like too good to be true, isn't it? Of course it is.
And of course it is, and they lose all spoilers. He runs off with a load of money that they just got off Jimmy, and it's kind of like, you know what? People would do that. Like it's stupid, and we go, you're absolutely stupid, and yet you look in real life and you look at some decisions people make, and you go, if you're in a movie, you'd be yelling at the screen that you're doing something stupid right now, and they'll go, yeah, but I'm doing it anyway. This is kind of how people work. And I like that about this film, and I like it when films do that and the characters aren't like complete like whizzes and poised and perfect about everything. There's something like that for escapism, but there is also a realism in people being stupid, and us as an audience and the film kind of assuming we're intelligent enough kind of not to judge them for it. There is a fine line between people making stupid decisions and you going, you're stupid, and people making stupid decisions and going, that is probably what would happen. Two people that have kind of been insulated the entire life. I mean, they later say that Louise had got this gun, but like never even held it before, refused to hold a gun, and it has now shot a guy point blank out of rage for her friend getting sexually assaulted. You're going to panic. You're going to do stupid stuff. And kind of run around, and you're going to get in a situation where it's sort of, you know what? Sod it. I'm this far down. Let's just keep going. What's the worst that's going to happen? She's really got nothing. She's at a job that she doesn't particularly like. Gene Davis as Thelma is kind of fleeing an abusive marriage, and they're kind of saying, you know what, we're on the run, but at least I've had fun. This has been the best few days of my life. This is an escape. It's just a kind of a tragedy that it's taken the circumstances in order to get them there. And the film really is just that kind of escape, the run away, the fleeing the situation, and it's so well done. It's so crisp. It's so clear. It's so poised. Even the Hans Zimmer score isn't as Hans Zimmery as it is now, so you kind of forget that it's a Hans Zimmer score.
It's quite subtle by his standards, isn't it?
I was going to say, it doesn't all sound like it's made with the kind of violin setting on a keyboard, going vroom, 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 which is all he does now. It's like you can tell it because it just sounds like it's made with a keyboard in about an hour, going like that on GarageBand. And the cinematography is great. Again, Ridley Scott is like, doesn't really have trademarks, but one of the things he likes to do is get kind of big open landscapes and kind of have the world as a character in it. And you do get these beautiful big wides of kind of the traveling around, and then the Grand Canyon right at the end. And it is just, it's a beautifully glorious film. I mean, Scott got nominated for Best Director at the Oscars. Callie Curry won Original Screenplay, and Sarandon Davis were both nominated for Best Actress. It got a couple of other noms as well. It was one of the big films of the year. Rightfully won a load of stuff. Also got nommed for Best Editing and Cinematography. Editing through Tom Noble and Adrian Biddle doing the cinematography. It's a glorious film. It really is. Like, and again, I kind of went, oh yeah, Thelma and Louise is a film, and they come back and I go, actually, this is really good. I kind of didn't realize how good it actually was at the time, and sometimes it takes a second for you to go, yep, no, I understand what the hype is about, because before it's like, yeah, it's good, but it's not like, I completely see why everyone thinks it's like one of the great masterpieces, and watch it back and go, yeah, I can see it now. I can see it. I get it.
Yeah, and Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis they're so good, and like having those, having those two sort of like opposites where, God, I always forget which one's which, but
yeah,
I think Louise, the tougher one, looking out for Thelma, and yeah, she's a little careless, she's a little naive, and
she's been tucked away from the world for like a decade and a half, sort of thing. She's 18, isn't it? So you kind of would be naive at that point. The world's kind of gone on without you in a way.
Yeah, and they're perfect. Like they play the roles so well. Putting those two types of characters together is great because, like, when I think of a road trip movie, I think of like planes, trains, and automobiles, and it's just nowhere near as touching, nowhere near as real. And a lot of that credit goes to them, certainly. But also the way this film approaches like believing women and showing like, oh, I'm not going to turn myself in because like I'm not going to have proof that this guy was trying to assault me.
Exactly. Yeah, one person's word against another's. They know.
And as they were saying,
the less likely parties to be believed.
Yeah, and he kind of takes advantage of her after. Do we think that the drink was spiked? She's at least very, very drunk at the very least.
I think it's heavily implied, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's heavily implied, if not stated. But she's been dancing with him all night, and they said, "Look, you've been." They're going to go, you've been dancing with them all night. They're going to say you asked for it. Who are they going to believe at this point? Nobody saw it. And after they've run away, there's a certain point where they're like, we're too far in now. What else can you do? And Harvey Keitel's kind of pleading with them to come in, going, I do believe you. And the great thing is that you believe that Harvey Keitel believes them as well. Yeah. He's kind of like the only person you think actually thinks that they are kind of innocent and this might have happened, because everyone is saying like these people would not normally shoot somebody and run away and start robbing shops.
Because there's not many decent men really in Ridley Scott's films in general, really.
No.
But especially in this, you have Keitel as one, and I think Jimmy is the other in this. I think he has got kind of Louise's best kind of interests at heart. He's probably just a bit heavy-handed in terms of trying to get her back and everything. In terms of engineering all that, but it's implied, I think, that they do kind of love each other. That obviously they come together and break up again quite regularly by the sounds of it. But they obviously do have a lot of affection for each other, and they seem to have chemistry. In the few scenes we do see them kind of talking to each other, there's some real affection there.
Yeah, and
it is nice to see Madsen in that more kind of domestic kind of role, just an ordinary guy, just in a relationship or struggling with being in a relationship. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, he's not got a knife out at any point, or normally at the very least.
Yeah. And then also, we talked a little bit about Brad Pitt, but seeing him playing like a kid who's hitchhiking around, looking for, like, I don't know, I guess women to con. I'm not quite sure what his game is. But man,
you know what it feels like? It feels like, was it Return to Horror and High that we did at one point that had George Clooney in it for like his third film? And you're just like, what are you doing in this? Like, you're about 5 in this film. Get out, be George Clooney. It's like, everyone had to start somewhere. It's slightly weird, but yeah, Brad Pitt does, and strangely enough, I don't know, does he do the accent quite well, Jacob? It sounds like the kind of accent that me and Sam would try to do if we're trying to take the mickey out of somebody from the Deep South. I don't know how kind of actually accurate it is.
It didn't faze me one way or the other. Where's Brad Pitt even? Also, we can't escape him. We need to stop talking about Brad Pitt so much. He's from Oklahoma, so I guess his accent's probably pretty genuine, because that's where at least parts of the film take place. So
yeah,
the part where they're like
Texas, aren't they? Yeah, to Mexico.
We're gonna go to Mexico without driving through Texas. I mean, that's like saying we're gonna drive to France without going through the Channel. Like, I mean, you have to you have to go so far out of your way coming from Oklahoma. It's just absurd.
Yeah. You essentially have to go to the coasts and drive down to avoid going through Texas.
Yeah, you have to go to like Arizona, which I think they do. I don't know. It looks like they're driving through Arizona, or New Mexico. Like at the end, I'm not quite sure where they are.
Yeah, someone's probably plotted out their journey, somewhere on the internet.
They look like they're in Monument Valley.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, but Yeah, just looking at it again, my exact knowledge of the US, I've got several roughly in mind, and a lot of the others are kind of out of the way. Yeah, pretty much half the Mexico border is Texas. You know, you can go through New Mexico, Arizona, or technically California as well, but realistically, 50% of your chance is going to go through Texas.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why they're building the wall to keep Susan Sarandon and
Gina
Davis in.
Yeah, this
exactly.
is what Harvey Keitel's doing. Way to trap them.
Which Harvey Keitel playing the cop is so funny because when I think of him, it's like Taxi Driver, where he's a pimp, Reservoir Dogs.
I actually think of him as Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, where but again, he's still criminal in that, isn't he? He's a fixer for the mob, you know.
I might think of him because in the UK he did a load of commercials for Direct Line. Are they an insurance company, comparison site kind of thing?
Yeah, insurance. Yeah, home insurance channel, I think. Yeah, and he reprised the Wolf character,
Winston Wolf. Yeah,
talk for a load of British homeowners about their options for insurance.
Yeah. So just some reason in my head, that's what he is. He's Winston Wolf.
We get some real weird big Hollywood stars on very British brands. It's like Stallone did that, and Army. I think they've both done like Warburton.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon's doing all the EE adverts.
But
I mean, Kevin Bacon never needs to work again after that EE kind of gig he's got.
In the UK, does he say, "Is there a sign on my house that says Dead Irish Storage?" Or
I don't think he does. We will find some of those and send them to you, Jacob, on YouTube.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Yeah.
Also, that's Quentin Tarantino. That is not Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, but yeah, it's still interesting that obviously from working here, and obviously Michael Madsen. I keep wanting to say Mikey Madison. Thanks to you last week, Jacob. Going, oh look, he's in Anora. Michael Madsen.
That would be a very different film if you had Michael Madsen playing Annie.
Mads Mikkelsen.
Mikey Mads Mikkelsen. Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's move on before we.
Person.
Yeah, I was going to say
that needs to be a No Way Home style film.
Would have been interesting. Although interestingly enough, Jodie Foster did express some interest in Thelma and Louise. I don't know why she dropped out. Maybe she was actually working on Silence of the Lambs at the time because obviously they're both 91.
I would imagine so. Yeah. Yeah, because they weren't originally pursuing it for that, were they? But she basically made them take the meeting, you know, and convinced them there and then that she was right for the role. Yeah.
And Michelle Pfeiffer was going to be in it as well. Pfeiffer dropped out for Love Field, and Jodie Foster dropped out for Silence of the Lambs, which makes it hilarious that then both Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis, I think, both lost out to her in Silence of the Lambs. So it's like, about picked the right one.
Pfeiffer was the first choice for Clarice Starling, wasn't she? I think
as well. It's only about 5 actresses in Hollywood at the time, you know, taking all the roles in sort of 1991.
Gina Davis as in whatever Silence of the Lambs would be crazy. I can't see it.
No,
you can't have a tall Clarice Starling. It's not right. It's just she needs to feel small, physically small compared to all these horrible men, you know. She's trying to investigate, you know. It's like the 5'2" Jodie Foster, you know, in that lift scene is so effective. I think Gina Davis being shoulder to shoulder with them wouldn't have worked.
Strange world we live in. But yeah, if you haven't seen Thelma and Louise, go see Thelma and Louise. Thelma and Louise is absolutely great. It is amazing that it's still holding up, and it's very different to the other kind of outlaw on the run films like Badlands or Bonnie and Clyde and stuff like that. It's kind of there's some of that vibe, but because it's 2 female characters and kind of I'm not sure if they were going for a kind of repressed queer thing of that, or they're just very good friends. It feels like it's on the borderline. You can interpret it in either way.
There's definitely been readings of that, and I get why it's been embraced by the queer community particularly, because there's definitely that level to it, you know. And if you don't want to look for that, you know, you won't notice it, but if you do want to dig for it, then you can say it's there. definitely.
I think it's possible to read that into it, even if you don't actually believe it is there to begin with. But it is a very nice, refreshing change again from some of the other kind of road trip movies, Outlaws on the Run. Because again, Bonnie and Clyde and I think Badlands are two of the sort of big sort of new wave of Hollywood versions of that. Both of those relationships are obviously kind of very heterosexual, male and female. With these two females, it's a completely different vibe, and it's slightly more freeing in a weird way than the out and out crime filled like avenging madness of those others. And it's just glorious watch.
Well, we do have some other avenging madness. Speaking of that,
I was going to say yes, all the way from Japan.
I mean, so obviously you mentioned that there's the link between this and Reservoir Dogs. Obviously Madsen getting the role of Mr. Bond via Harvey Keitel, recommends him.
Very quickly on that, apparently Madsen was always wanting the role of who is it that survives? Is it Steve Buscemi or Tim Roth that survives? I can't remember.
Mr. Pink survives.
Yeah, that's the one. He's always wanting the role of Mr. Pink. And literally vying for the role of Mr. Pink. It's like kind of he gets the role of Mr. Blonde, but goes for the role of Mr. Pink.
Of all those roles, the ones you can't visualize with anyone else in them are Steve Buscemi and Michael Madsen. They're just completely inseparable from those characters.
Yeah. But he's going for it, and apparently he goes and reads, after he's kind of been cast as Mr. Blonde, he goes and reads Mr. Pink's lines for Quentin to try and convince him. And apparently Tarantino goes, yeah, that's all very good. That's very good. But you're still Mr. Blonde, right?